rain, and then Thursday things clear out. They'll have a high of 57 on Thursday, and things start to warm up, 65, 75 on Saturday, Sunday 68, and on Monday, starting the work week, under partly cloudy skies there in Manhattan, Kansas, with 74 degrees. I'm Extension's Todd Gleason.
When it comes to our members, Chris Magnuson connects rural routes for you. Chris leads Illinois Farm Bureau's efforts to provide valuable information to our members. He has spent 2 decades with IFB. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I grew up on a farm with corn, soybeans, and Christmas trees. I've been in ag communication for 3 decades now. My greatest satisfaction has always remained the same, to serve our members.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
If you're in the mood for some sprucing up, you're in luck. From big to small or farm to front yard, your Illinois Farm Bureau member discount from John Deere is ready and waiting to help. It's easy to think green when it's the Rewards loyalty program with savings on equipment, special parts, and home and workshop products. Whether your tasks involve mowing, planting, or cleaning, you'll be set for whatever your work requires. All you need to do is sign up, have your membership number handy, and go to johndeere.com/Farm Bureau.
You're listening to RFD Town and Country Partners, connecting you with the food you eat, the Illinois farmers who grow it, and the food-related events, destinations, and lifestyles that make our state great.
Hey, good day to you. Welcome to Town and Country Partners here on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Rita Frazier on a Monday. Well, we thought we started this day with some sun, but clouds have moved in, and I think we're all just crossing our fingers, praying that the rain moves elsewhere and misses the Midwest totally. But I don't think we're going to get that lucky. Dwayne Friend is our guest today. Dwayne, extension educator, environmental stewardship and energy, based in Morgan County. Dwayne, can you hold off this rain for us?
Well, I sent in the paperwork, but I don't know if it'll get back in time.
How are things today out your window?
Actually, right now, I think we're in between sets of clouds. I've got bright blue sky and bright sunshine, so if they could just hold on to this for about the next 10 days, that would be great.
That would be. How are field conditions?
Very soggy. Very little planted, although I have seen a few fields around town where the corn is already popping up, so those folks that did get a little bit of planting done before all this set in are getting their labors visual at this point. I think there's a few drowned out spots, and I'm sure it's the same all around the state, but just the amount of erosion especially. Well, we had some during the winter, but then with this last set of rainfall events that we had last week, the erosion rates that I've seen on fields has just been tremendous. There's going to have to be a lot of tillage done just to fill those in before they can even get the fields ready for planting.
Yeah, compaction, a huge concern, not only for our larger row crop farmers, but even for the truck patch and the gardeners. Everybody's got to deal with that.
Yeah, and if you think about even on a garden situation, you think a lot of times maybe someone would go out with a rototiller or something like that, and it's not that heavy. They may not think they're not doing a lot of compaction, but if you go out, especially when the soil is really wet like it is right now, you can cause quite a bit of compaction with that rototiller. So just like any other type of tillage, it's better to wait until that ground is dried out a little bit before you go in there. Even though you may be really biting at the bit to get out there and get something done, you may be doing a lot more damage to the soil than what you realize.
Yeah, and that's tough for gardeners, really tough for farmers just because of the acreage difference. And I know last fall we still are kind of paying for what was done then.
Yeah, and once that compaction is in place, the surface compaction, nature will do its part and help alleviate some of that with wetting and drying and freezing and thawing. But you start getting compaction much below 4 inches, and it's really hard to get that out. Nature isn't used to that type of compaction, and once it's there, it's going to be there for quite a while. And even if some folks that go in with the rippers and take that out, if you have similar conditions and you go back on it, it's right back there again the next year.
You know, the other thing, we have all kinds of homeowner issues, from things that you've talked about. We hope that folks took your advice and cleaned out their gutters, checked that sump pump. I mean, everything has to be working just so when you get these kinds of rain systems that move through.
I've seen a lot of areas where sump pumps are running about every 2 to 3 minutes, and maybe even faster than that in some cases. So yes, hopefully they've got a backup system if they need that for a sump pump that's going to be running pretty consistently, or at the very minimum have a backup sump pump available, so if that one conks out, they can have one put back in fairly quickly. And then one of the other things that we get a lot of calls about after all of these heavy rainfall events is water quality and whether they have to be concerned about water getting in their well. And we've had several people come in the last few weeks asking about that and wondering whether they need to get their water tested. And for most folks, if they've got relatively new wells, it's really not a big concern, especially if you've got the sealed well, the more modern-looking type of wells out there with the sealed top to it. On the other hand, if you've got maybe an older dug well or bored well or something like that, especially if it's got brick lining or something like that, you may have to be concerned about surface water contamination in that. Certainly if the water's getting cloudy or it's got an off color to it, I would definitely think about trying to get that tested. And once it does get tested, if you do find it has bacteria in it, then the next question is, well, what do I do about that? And about the only thing that could be done to get rid of that bacteria is going to be putting some bleach in there. And for years we've talked about disinfecting a well, giving folks amounts, depending on how big the well is, how much chlorine to put in there. I've seen some research, though, in the last few years that says it may not just be as simple as that, going through that procedure, because in some cases, especially on older piping and older wells, not only are you doing something with that bacteria, but the oxidizing agents or processes in that chlorine can be releasing some other byproducts into that water that you may not really want. This is some research that I saw from out in Arizona where they were talking about some of the compounds, some of the things that are used for the pipes themselves, joining the pipes together. So, it's one of those things that probably could be done by an individual if they really wanted to. But I think my recommendation at this point is really to have a professional do that if it's needed to be done. Make sure they use the proper amounts, make sure that it all gets cleared out before you start using it. And then even after that, you want to get that water retested and make sure that there's not a residual bacteria in there. And if there is, that could well mean that you've got some kind of a break in the system that's allowing a continuous influx of nasty water. So in that case, then you need to have a professional, again, delve a little bit more into the system and find out where that contamination is coming from exactly.
Now, when you say professional, Dwayne, what kind of person would come and test your well?
Well, if you're talking about the testing itself, the testing could be done by the homeowner themselves. And there's several different places that could be done. Local health departments used to do quite a bit of that, but they just don't have, especially for this type of setting, they wouldn't be able to handle a large number of tests. So an individual is probably going to have to go to a private lab to get the water tested. We can supply listings for folks in the state of those labs, and my recommendation would be if you haven't dealt with a private lab before, I would contact them, tell them what you have that you want tested, find out what the prices are, and they will give you procedures on how to get a good sample for that, and then send that in and get the results back and then go from there. If you're just looking at mineral contamination, a really good place to go to would be the Illinois State Water Survey has a public service lab, and they do tests for minerals within the lab. They're not going to do tests for bacteria, but they will do tests for minerals. There is a cost to that, but it's relatively minimal. And if folks are interested in having that done, they can contact, again, it's called the Public Service Lab through the Illinois State Water Survey.
I always learn so much from talking to you. It's wonderful.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, great resource.
My paper today, then.
Yes, you have. Yes, so a couple minutes remain. So extension calendar. As soon as we dry up, lots of things are going to happen. Do you have some things coming up?
Well, one thing in particular that we've done this just about every year for about the last 5 or 6 years is we start getting questions typically about this time of year and on throughout the summer on farm ponds. And people are concerned about the plants in there and sometimes getting, excessive plants. So here in Jacksonville on May the 22nd in the evening, we are going to have a farm pond seminar from about 6 to 8 p.m. We're going to talk about pond ecology and talk about how oxygen levels change in a pond throughout the year, how ponds stratify or layer at different times of the year, which affects oxygen levels, how those oxygen levels affect fish. And we're also going to talk about plant management and fish management. And especially on that end of it, we're going to have our local IDNR fisheries biologist, Blake Rubush, in to talk about fish stocking, fish populations, and if you have a pond with existing fish populations, if you're wanting to manage those, what to do in those cases as well. So, again, that's on May 22nd here in Jacksonville from 6 to 8 p.m.
Awesome. Sounds great. Dwayne, time has come and gone. Thank you for all of your information, and we'll talk to you next month. Dwayne Friend, Extension Educator, Environmental Stewardship and Energy. When we come back, we'll get another food-related destination piece with Mike Orso, and we'll talk to a Macoupin County cattle farmer who's going to be opening a meat market in Edwardsville this week. Andrew Bagley joins us at the tail end of the program. This is Town and Country Partners.
Are you preparing for planting season? We don't mean to be a pest, but here's a few things you need to know before you grow. The Illinois Department of Agriculture now requires special local needs labels, including new restrictions for the use of herbicide dicamba on top of soybeans in Illinois for the 2019 growing season. Did you know these additional restrictions go beyond federally approved labels? Remember, the label is the law. To find out more about these Illinois-specific labels, visit ilfb.org/label-aware.
All ag.
All Illinois.
All now.
There are a lot of smartphone apps out there, but do they have what's important to us here in Illinois? The Farm Week Now app does, and it's always at your fingertips. All ag, all Illinois, and 24/7 where and when you need it for free. Go to your app or Play Store on your smartphone, hit search, type in Farm Week Now, that's one word, and download it today. Brought to you by Illinois Farm Bureau, where we're all about farm, family, and food.
With what happens on the farm can impact your family and is related to food, I'm Mike Orso with RFD, Town and Country Partners. In between the rains and even snow late last month, specialty grower James Gobert planted his first crop.
Well, we're not too far behind of what we should be, but we have a busy few weeks ahead of us.
From parsley to pumpkins, Gobert grows more than 24 herbs and vegetables across 3 different Illinois counties.
It's a struggle. You know, everyone wants a perfect produce, and you know, a lot of different produce is grown indoors in greenhouses now, and it looks nice, but it doesn't always, I think, taste as good as something growing from the earth in the soil. But growing it in the soil, there's a lot of different issues with, you know, weather and humidity and disease and insects, and it's a challenge, but it's a fun challenge for me.
The 28-year-old Gobert got his start farming more than a decade ago and has demonstrated that it is possible to be young and farm.
One of the main issues is just, you know, money to operate and getting going. And, you know, I started small, and we've grown into what we have now, and it's important to be able to get that money if needed and have the support from the customers, which I do, and having the labor to get the job done. Just putting all that together takes a lot of organization, and I've learned a ton the last 10 years.
Gobert named his company near Union in McHenry County that grows, packs, and ships herbs and vegetables. J&J Dill.
I started actually as a freshman in high school growing dill, and kind of just grew from there. I grew all the way through high school in the summer, growing dill and different herbs. And then when I graduated, I bought a farm in Union, this farm that we're sitting at right now, and it's just growing from there. And now we farm around 1,100 acres. About 600 acres are vegetables.
The farmer has been able to capitalize on increased demand for Illinois locally grown fruits and vegetables.
I have, and it's really helped me get into some of my customers. Kind of thankful for Chicagoland customers that are demanding local.
James Gobert will harvest his first crop of dill next month. He and his other 60 employees will then be planting, weeding, feeding, and harvesting his other 24. That include collard greens, kale, kohlrabi through October.
It's a lot of hard work that goes on here, and it's way different than growing corn and beans. So I don't think there's not a ton of people just wanting to grow all these crazy greens that I grow.
For RFD Town and Country Partners, I'm Mike Orso.
Farm Week and FarmWeekNow.com journalist Daniel Grant connects rural routes for you. With more than 2 decades of reporting under his belt, Dan is the go-to source for farmers when it comes to commodities. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I grew up on a grain and livestock farm near Roseville in Warren County. What I love about my job is working with people, traveling across Illinois, and visiting farms along the way.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Spring is here and things are buzzing. Farmers and pollinators are working together to help feed us. In fact, 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat exists because of bees, butterflies, birds, bats, and other insects. Pollinators are important to our food system and the ecosystem overall. That's why farmers and those in the agricultural industry are working together to protect pollinators through education, research, and conservation efforts. Visit ilagformonarchs.org to join the buzz. That's ilagformonarchs.org.
We're back on RFD Town and Country Partners. Well, a new meat market will be opening in Edwardsville in just a couple of days. The man behind the beef is Andrew Bagley, Macoupin County.
Really excited to get to touch base with Andrew Bagley in Shipman. And Andrew, I think, I'm not sure the last time I talked to you on the phone, but it's sure been a long time since I was with you on your farm there along Route 16. Things have changed for you a bit.
We've made some changes, that's for sure. As far as the farm goes, we expanded our infrastructure a little bit and put up a new calving barn, a new monoslope that we use. It's simply just a loafing type structure to keep them out of the weather during the winter, some fence line bunks, that type of stuff. The farm there on the highway was a dairy farm for years until the mid-50s, and it was still pretty well set up as a dairy farm. So it was, a lot of hand feeding by bucket, driving in lots, and we just, my brother and I decided if we're going to do this another 30 years or whatever to the rest of our life, essentially, then let's invest into making it just a little bit more feasible and easy for everybody to do. So, about a year ago, we finished the calving barn. We had already finished calving when we got it finished last year, moved the cows and calves over after. This year, we calved everything over there, and we put some heat in the barn. We keep it at like 32 degrees, just enough so they don't freeze. But this winter, it made a huge difference. Obviously, with the extreme cold temperatures we had, all the moisture, it was a mess for anybody in the cattle industry or livestock in general, and I know it sure helped out on our farm.
And so your name of your farm, has it remained the same?
So we've got a couple entities. There's Bagley Grain and Livestock is myself. We do the corn, soybeans, that type of stuff, and then our backgrounding operation. We still background a few hundred head of feeders a year. Heifers, we buy them weighing 500 pounds, background them for 100, 120 days, and then take them back as yearlings. We've got a couple lots dedicated to that, and that's worked out pretty well for us. And then we have Bagley's Triple B Angus, which is the purebred side. That venture with my brother and my mom. And so the 3 of us, we grew up with the Angus cattle. And when my dad passed, they both still wanted to be very much involved in that. I got a couple nephews that are are really excited and getting into showing cattle again. And so those are kind of the two entities we have on the farm.
Well, I'm sure so happy for you. Now let's transition into the other situation. Now, a little bit more about your background. Most people from Macoupin and Montgomery County realize it, but you not only have had this farm experience, you've had a great education, and you had a packer background too, which has put you kind of an expert in the meat business, and that's where you're taking another venture.
Yeah, so when I was in college at the U of I was an animal science major, but I had a pretty strong emphasis in meat and muscle science. I was on the meat judging team. Dr. Carr, Dr. McKeith were very influential in my life, and I had an internship at an IBP, or at the time, Tyson now, packing plant out in Nebraska one summer. Fell in love with the industry. When I got done with college, I went to work for Tyson, selling boxed beef in the Chicago area. The opportunity for me to come back home and farm came about, so I did so, and farmed with my dad and all that until 2009 when he passed, and then we've kind of done it on our own. A couple years ago, I was approached about joining up with Hanson Meat Co. out of Jerseyville about opening a store in Edwardsville. I did that. We opened the store, actually got out of the business about a year ago. Ryan kept running the store. He had another venture, was taking up all of his time, and it was just, he didn't have the time to commit to it to make it go, and it's simply a matter of time, I think. Few businesses like that succeed or even break even in the first year or two. So hopefully we've got that under our belt, but he offered to sell me the business back. So my brother and sister-in-law and I and my fiance have decided that we're going to take it on, and we're opening Bagley Farms Meat Market at the same location in Edwardsville at University Point right off 157. But we've got product coming in and got to go unload a truck here in a little bit, actually. And we're going to focus on local products. We raise our own beef. We're going to try to get some of that in there. Local produce will be huge during the summer. The Metro East and has a lot of produce farmers down there, so hopefully we can get some of that in during the summer. One thing I try to express to everyone is that they have to understand that while we want to provide local, we can't do it 100% of the time. A beef carcass has about 24 ribeyes in it. Well, I'm assuming on a Good Friday afternoon when the grills are fired up, we can sell all of them in an afternoon, and then I'm left with 350 pounds of ground beef that I don't know what to do with. So we're going to have to source some other boxed beef in, but it's definitely coming from reputable sources and will be high-quality products. So that's kind of the business adventure in a nutshell.
Are you looking maybe down the road at this point, to bring in a few more local producers, or is that just another conversation?
That's absolutely. We would like to have as many local producers as possible. We've reached out to the Marcotte family in Greenville about putting their local cheese in. Like I mentioned, the produce, fruits. There are, apples and peaches are big around here at a local level. When those come ripe, that's something that we definitely look forward to having. As far as the meat goes, I can't produce it all. We would love to work with other producers to get some of their stuff in there. There's a lot of logistics behind that, getting the animals to the processor, getting the meat to the store, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be a learning curve. There's no doubt about that. I had, a decent amount of experience with it a couple years ago when I was involved, but the business side of things is something that I'm going to have to work on and figure out 100%, and the logistics of working with local producers to get their product in the store on a timely manner, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know how long it's been. Let's just say 15 years. So the only thing left now, Mr. Bagley, is a restaurant. So you're just like that one step closer to getting that done. Andrew Bagley, Bagley Farm Meat Market. We wish him the very best. Opening actually Wednesday, University Point.